Ladies and gentlemen, the Dead String Quartet.
Hello and welcome to the Not Ready for Primetime podcast. We're Gary Seath and Brad Robinson.
And you're not.
This week we're taking a look back at Season 1, Episode 9 with host Elliott Gould and musical guest Anne Murray. This show originally aired on January 10th, 1976.
Gary, let me be the first to welcome our listeners to 1976, baby. This show has everything. Big hair, bad outfits, multiple mustaches, culturally insensitive jokes that may not translate well into current time, and, of course, Elliott Gould.
I appreciate that.
It's a new year, 1976, baby. I'm bringing it out. I'm going to nominate myself for an Emmy with this one.
This show was their first show back after their first break, which we discussed in the last episode was something they seemed to sorely need. And my understanding is that Lorne Michaels was so disappointed in that show that he had Michael O'Donoghue and Chevy Chase stay with him over the holiday break. Is that right?
Yeah, they stayed up in New York and wrote over the break, mostly this episode and some sketches in the future. But I mean, I think it paid off because I think this is a hell of an episode.
I'm going to be honest. When I first watched this episode, I knew that this was the episode that they win an Emmy for, correct? This is the episode they win for season 1.
They win a few Emmys this season. We mentioned in the Paul Simon episode, Dave Wilson wins for directing. This episode, they submitted for writing. And this is the episode that won them the Emmy for outstanding writing in a comedy, variety, or music series. But they go on to win 4 Emmys this season from the show this season.
Got it. Yeah. But knowing that coming into watching this as an entire episode all the way through, I had lofty expectations of what this episode was.
Right.
And on the first pass, I was a little underwhelmed at parts of it.
Really?
But I went back and I, watched some of the sketches and I was like, oh, okay. And all in all, you're right. This is a very good episode.
See, I think I had the reverse. I mean, I knew that the whole Emmy chatter about it, but I'm not a huge Elliott Gould fan. I never really got his vibe, mystique, allure. So I mean, I like him on Saturday Night Live and he's a great host. He hosts many times and he's very funny, but I've never been a huge Elliott Gould fan. So for that, I think I came in from a little bit of a different vantage point, but
It's a fun episode. He's another fun host, I think. Akin to Candice Bergen in her first appearance, I felt like Elliott Gould had fun tonight. He
totally
seemed to enjoy himself every time he was on screen, and that goes really far in this show, as we've seen.
Well, Lorne has said, too, actually, that he thinks this is the first show that wasn't about the host, which is one of the reasons why it turned out so well, which I think you and I have argued in the past already. We thought Candice Bergen kind of fell into that mold, which I do still think so. But no, Lorne said everything you said. And to your point too, Elliott Gould is enjoying himself and he's in a lot, which is the stuff I always love. When you see the host do a lot of stuff, he's in so much and he interacts with the cast so much. It all lends itself to a great episode. And, I think they really needed that break. I think they really needed that holiday break. I'm sure some of the writers and cast just took off and checked out for a while. As you said, Lorne and Michael and Chevy are hunkered down writing. And I mean, it pays off. You get, Interior Demolitionist, which is a great vehicle for Chevy slapstick. You get Godfather Therapy. You get the Killer Bees sketch. There's a lot of really good stuff in here that I think they just needed the time.
Whatever they did in that time, the three of them to come up with a lot of these ideas for the next few shows, like you said, all in all, it works and pays off.
And I think they got a good host. I mean, I think,
oh yeah,
this is probably one of a handful of hosts who could come in and really really helped pick things up. So I think, 1976 Elliott Gould, which kind of a big deal, I guess. Big movie star, right?
Totally a big deal. Yeah. I mean, just the year before, he was in Nashville, just like Lily Tomlin was. Yeah. He was in a comedy called Whiffs in 1975. Like 1975, he had 3 films come out. 1974, he had 4 films. Like he has just been in a lot of movies, some really good and some not great.
He's already been nominated for an Oscar at this point.
Exactly. So he's a big star.
Like, wasn't he already married to Barbra Streisand by this point?
He was already married and divorced from Barbra Streisand. At this point,
I tried to use the past tense. I was trying to be proper.
Yes. But Elliott Gould is a movie star and a performer, much in the way that Lily Tomlin came on and surprised us with her singing and how well she sang. When Elliott Gould does his little song and dance number, look, it wasn't like, oh my God, he's so amazing, but he could hold his own, I think. He's a performer.
Oh, 100%. A total performer, yeah. Which is what this show needs.
When they have a performer like that on this show, it really works. And it allows that person to shine.
Did we forget to mention MASH?
I didn't forget to mention MASH, but it came out 5 years before. I was just talking about his recent roles.
Recent, sorry.
Yeah.
Because MASH was pretty big. That's one thing that's what
huge.
I remember him mostly from. So, okay, yes, big movie star.
Right. Like the early 70s were Elliott Gould's heyday.
Oh my God. Mr. 70s.
Can we just talk about his mustache now?
Oh my, please.
It is an amazing, huge 1970s mustache.
It's great.
It's
great.
It reminds me of like a mustache a little kid would draw on someone. If you were like, oh, give that person a mustache, and they would just color this big giant caterpillar across his lip. It was amazing.
It's great.
But yeah, this show's fun. Like this show is fun all the way through. There are some really good bits. There are some bits that, miss the mark, but that's okay. And there's unfortunately some reruns.
Well, this should be interesting. It sounds like we have some different viewpoints on this one, so I'm intrigued to see where we go on this.
Yeah, should be good. Should we get into it? The cold open this week is the Dead String Quartet.
Sorry, I'm laughing already about it. It's good. No, I'm already laughing.
It's Dan, Lorraine, Garrett, and Chevy on stage as a string quartet, and they are all dead. And then one by one, starting with Dan, they fall over like dominoes, leading to Chevy's fall off of the stage for his Live to New York.
Yeah. Written by Chevy, this piece. The first thing I noticed was that little catwalk stage is back.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing that got me. And then, as you said, Dan, they're just sitting there and it's quiet. And all of a sudden you start to hear a little bit of a sound. You realize it's Dan nodding off and starting to lean into his instrument. And then he leads in. So by the time he leans into Lorraine, you realize what's going to happen.
Right.
You realize, okay. And I write, oh shit, this is going to hurt. Because that stage is high, and you're looking at Chevy, and he's holding a cello, right? Is that a cello he's got?
Yeah.
Right?
Yes,
and so it's like, he's on a high stage holding a big ass instrument, and all I can think of is like, this is going to hurt.
What? Yes, and what caught my attention was because they were on the catwalk, there was a woman there who knew what was going to happen, and you could tell she like starts putting her hands up, and you can see her like, oh no.
Well, you know why she knew it was going to happen? They put a folding chair on the ground. So, of course, that just gave it away. When there's, again, 4 people sitting in chairs, put a metal folding chair on the ground so Chevy has something to fall into.
Right. Which...
It is loud. It does help with the sound.
Yes. But it would not be my preferred choice of things to fall into.
From a high stage. But no, I thought this was great. Did you like this?
I liked this more than I thought I would.
Yeah.
Like when Don Pardo introduces, ladies and gentlemen, the Dead String Quartet,
right? And
I see it, I was like, I knew what it was.
It takes you a minute. It takes you a minute to get it. I thought it took me a minute.
Yeah, and then I was like, okay. I think it was when Dan starts falling, and you realize that his bow is actually playing his violin. Yeah. That's when I was like, okay, this is. It started like that's when I was like, yes, this is funny.
It was smart. It was funny and simple, short, funny. And I like that it wasn't Gerald Ford. They found a different way to do the opening and keep it like an actual self-contained sketch. So I like that.
And much like the laundromat scene last week, there was no dialogue.
Right.
It's very different from that, but except that it had no dialogue and it worked.
Yeah, totally works.
Yeah. It was fun. It was a good opening.
It was a very good opening. It was a very good return to the show.
We go through the credits. Nothing interesting there, in my opinion, this week.
I liked the music. It was nice that the music was back. You remember we had 2 weeks of kind of like subdued, kind of low vibe. It was fun to have that good energy music. I noticed it right away. I liked it.
Yeah. And they also kept up the audience laughter and clapping longer into the credits than I think they normally have.
Maybe. It's
just louder. Elliott Gould then comes down, after he's introduced, comes down the stairs again. 4 weeks in a row. I think this is now, we're set with our host entering the show. And this is actually when I noticed that the catwalk was back again. He comes in, he's smoking a cigarette, he has a coat on with gloves.
Hey, it's the 70s, baby. Smoke on camera, my friend.
Totally. I just didn't understand. He's like, I just came in from the island. He asks if the Islanders won, whatever. And then he immediately says that he found some old music there and turns around to have Paul Schaefer play for him.
Yeah, 2 of my top notes here. Hell of a mustache, smoking on camera. And do I have a smoking counter for this episode? Yes, I do.
Oh, good. I'm curious about that. So Elliott Gould does this little song and dance number that I referenced earlier, and it's fun. He's good.
He is good. I mean, he's trained. Again, we're talking he's a big movie star. He started in Broadway in the 50s and 60s. He's a musical guy. He is a song and dance guy. So this is probably a side most people who at the time knew Elliott Gould didn't know about. I didn't know about. And yeah, does he blow the doors off? No, but it's great. It's fun. And I think he sets the standard a little bit for, here's a go-to option for monologues, song and dance, because we'll see this over and over and over again in the next 50 years.
He does have the one suspender line that he's like suspenders, and it totally fell flat with the audience, but I appreciated it, I think, because it fell flat.
It goes a little long, but it's fun.
It does go.
But then Gilda shows up.
Then Gilda shows up to say that she had fun with Elliott last night at her apartment, and she's being, that shy, adorable Gilda.
It's Gilda playing Gilda, and it's still good. It's still funny.
Yeah.
It's a hilarious setup. Wonderful time last night. When you left my place this morning, it's great. It's just really funny. It was a surprising end to the monologue and very fun. And I think already at this point now, we've only seen 2 things. Things already feel better or different or just more fun than they did from the Christmas episode. Like the vibe in general just seems fun this early on, which is exciting, which is one of the reasons why I got into the episode so quick and was really behind it, because I was having fun right off the bat.
Well, one of the things that I noticed, I agree with you. I was immediately thinking, oh, this is fun. This is more fun than we had. Candice Bergen, remember in the Christmas episode, doesn't really have a monologue. Right. She pitches it right to the musical guest. This one, with his monologue, he's bringing the energy and the fun that just wasn't there in the last episode. And so it's already bringing that energy and that enthusiasm for what we're about to sit through for the next hour.
Yeah, totally.
And it's going to be fun. After the monologue, I guess after Gilda leaves the set, Elliott throws to a pre-taped commercial, which is once again the Try Hard battery commercial that we saw.
Yeah, why? That's my note. It's why?
Yeah, this is a repeat from episode 2. I didn't really think it was that funny then.
No, my note was one, why play a rerun? And if you're going to play a rerun, why play such a crappy one? This is one of the
weaker ones.
Yeah, this is one of the weaker pre-tapes they did. I mean, I guess because no one was around, obviously, over the break, but this would have been a great spot for me for a new pre-tape.
Sure.
Yeah. Or, and I guess you couldn't do it because of Gilda, but the Shimmer ad later on, when we see that sketch, my first thought when I saw that was this would have been great, that opening spot, instead of that try hard. Put this Shimmer, because the Shimmer's hilarious. But, whatever.
After that, we go to Interior Demolitionists, which is great because for me, I was like, oh, good, we don't have the musical act so high up in the show this week.
I was going to ask you. I was going to wait till we saw the musical guest, but I thought you must have loved the fact that it at least took 20 minutes till we got to them.
Yeah, no, I was afraid that going from the pre-tape, we were going to go right to a musical guest, and that momentum that I thought we built with the monologue was going to go away.
Mm-hmm. Right.
But it doesn't. We have Interior Demolitionists, which is Elliott Gould and Chevy Chase come to the door of Jane and just start demolishing the interior of her home.
Is now the point in our episode.
Oh, totally. How great was Jane? Yeah.
Yeah. The guys knock on the door. She has no idea what's going on. She tries to call up to her husband. Dan Aykroyd's in the shower. He can't come down. And these two guys come in. And Chevy and Elliott play it so subdued. Like this has such potential to go way over the top. And the two of them play it so low key as they just start breaking stuff and bashing stuff and very matter of the fact. And, you know, Jane's got some good lines, or my husband doesn't tell me anything. Are you sure you have the right house?
His voice sounds like a lot of other people on the phone.
And it's just all like slapstick and physical humor for these two guys. The only thing that went a little bit to me over the top was when Chevy started like dancing or jumping in the hutch at the one point near the end. That was a little bit, but they have a great gag with the TV set with the ball and chain. Where he's like, "Boss, you ready for the TV?" And he opens up the little bag and he holds the chain with the ball, the bowling ball at the end of it. The TV blows up a little bit. It's great. It's hilarious.
My son was watching this with me, and he was like, "Did TVs really blow up in the 70s?"
They could have.
Yeah. No, it was great. I thought it was a really good sketch. And then Dan comes down, and he's upset that they didn't demolish things enough. And that's the out.
Yeah. The camera work in this is great. There's a great bit back to the TV where they cut to like a close-up of Jane, and like her reaction is great, and like the cutaway of that is great. Elliott Gould, when he takes the chair to the hutch, is like, I was like, holy shit, he's going to town.
Yeah. I was thinking about this and them writing that, and I was thinking like, this is just something that you write in my mind. It's like when you're frustrated and you just want to break shit. Like,
yeah.
Oh, this would be fun to do. Let's do this.
That's all they do. Yeah, they just literally break shit. They cut the chandelier, the light fixture off the top. Does a classic gag, falls through a glass coffee table. It's great. Dan finally enters, and you're like, okay, what's going on? Because you can't tell if he's into it or he's not into it. You don't know what's going on. And then Garrett Morris comes in. They've rigged the explosives. Okay, I took care of it. Yeah. And then then they try to blow up the couch.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was wrong. Like it didn't work the way he wanted to, because I was like, were they trying to blow it up? I think even Chevy comes over and starts lifting the cushions to see what the hell went wrong.
Yeah. It seemed like however it was wired didn't go the way everyone wanted it to. But
did you notice Jane in that? When the couch goes, she's in the background. She has a great reaction. She like jumps and flails her arms. Like she's really good in the deep background. And then finally, they kick everybody out. And then Dan obviously admits that he did want it. And he complains that they didn't break everything. And there's a vase with just a little chip. And then Jane goes to throw the vase and the vase doesn't break.
Yeah.
It's like the goose in this sketch make it even funnier. Like the couch not blowing up and her whipping the vase against the wall and it doesn't break. Are like two of the funniest jokes that aren't even meant to be in this sketch. But it's just fun. It's just them having fun, which was great to see.
Next we have an all-time classic.
Sketch. Yet I have a newfound appreciation for it after watching it, actually.
Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's Godfather Group Therapy, and it is John Belushi playing Vito Corleone in therapy, talking about the Tattaglias. Elliott Gould is the therapist, and this is the first time we see Sherry, Lorraine Newman's Sherry, in her wig and full getup, and they're trying to get him to open up about his true feelings about the Tattaglia crime family.
Like you said, it's a classic sketch written by Michael O'Donoghue. It's one of his best. I've never understood the intro, and I've seen this hundreds of times probably. It's another one that's on the John Belushi VHS. But I've never understood the intro where Elliott Gould comes in, and before they start the session, he talks about how he's got the personal commitment the next week, and we're going to change the time. It's like, what's the point?
Right, because he does it again at the end, too.
And he gives a different time at the end, which always bothered me. I never understood that. Maybe he just messed up. I don't know. But that always was weird. But I like how in this sketch, they don't sell it with like a voiceover or a title screen that he's the guy, that he's Vito Corleone. Like they let it get in and organically. Elliott Gould's character reveals, which I thought was really cool. It's a good way to do it. And, it's another stellar Belushi impression. It's the second time now that he does an impression and gets one or two lines out and the audience goes nuts.
Yeah.
Like the Joe Cocker impression, even stops him. If you hear him, he's like, he's going, he's, okay, one more thing. Like he actually stops the audience so he can keep going with his dialogue.
This is amazing.
It's funny. There's so much good stuff in this sketch. There's a quote Elliott Gould has where he says, "My contribution to that sketch was that I smoked a pipe." By the way, we're one cigarette and one pipe. But, the Belushi of it is so great. And as they slowly try to like peel him back and he starts doing his Brando and starts talking about all the Godfather stuff. And
terrible. We had to go to the mattresses. Clemenza sleeps with the fishes. Johnny is finished in Hollywood. They blew up Michael's wife and lovely car. The Taglias, the Bazzinis, the Boyardis, they all have contracts out on me. The feds are watching me. Kiefer is investigating me. The ASPCA is after me about this horse thing.
He's just so good. It's just so, there's so many great Godfather lines they say in this. But it's the Sherry we know, like you said, we now know this is Sherry. At the time, no one knew what this was. They'd seen the Valley Girl a little bit in that one cold open, but like this is what we know as the iconic Sherry character that she'll do, the Valley Girl. It's the only second time we've seen it so far. And it's so much better than it was the first time. Not the first time was bad, but it's so much more fleshed out now.
Yeah.
In this scene. And I always thought of this as a Belushi sketch. I always thought this sketch was about Belushi doing Brando. And in watching it this time, I don't think so. I think this is a Lorraine Newman sketch because she knocks it out of the park on this. John's great and he takes the first half and then he falls down with a heart attack doing the Brando bit and he lays on the ground for the last 5 minutes and Lorraine Newman just takes the ball and runs with it.
Yeah.
And she is excellent.
Yeah. It's funny. I had the same thought when I was watching this because of how strong she is. And to your point, we don't really know this character yet. We don't know the Valley Girl character except for that cold open. And in this, she has room to breathe and to deliver her lines that she didn't have in the cold open. Like she and Chevy were talking over one another there. Mm-hmm. And here she's like getting the character out and everything. And she's phenomenal. And I think in my mind, Lorraine is often, unsung in the original cast because of sketches like this where she delivers it, but someone else just happens to also be killing it in the sketch at the same time as her.
Well, this is a prime example, I think, of how this show would have had a shot and did win the Emmy for writing. I mean, this sketch is just written so well. The least funny thing he does is and it's funny being Belushi, is when he tries to be physical and he puts the orange peel in his mouth and walks around. It's like, it was okay, but it's like the heart attack joke was great. And again, that sets up Lorraine awesome. And even Lorraine, to her credit too, the audience stops her. At one point she's going through her, her dialogue and she's like, I'm not kidding. Like they're laughing so hard. She's like reacting to them. Like, I'm not kidding. I love people. And she's talking about trying to be a stewardess.
Well, I thought it was really beautiful. And I can really relate to what kind of changes Vito was going through. Because I went through the same thing when I was deciding to be a stewardess. It was so weird. My friends, I'm not kidding, man. My friends kept asking me, Guys, Sherry, why do you want to be a stewardess, And I had to get super reflective and ask myself, well, Guys, Sherry, why do you want to be a stewardess? And I realized that it's because I love people. I really do. I love to serve them and help them try to fall asleep sitting up and everything. Also, I really had to get out of Encino, man. I am not kidding. It was really getting hairy, my boyfriend Brad and me were supposed to get married and everything, So I was making a peach cobbler for his mother, and I overheard her say, look, the Shix is making us a Presbyterian pie.
Everybody could see what was going on. This is so good for the two of them. Just such a good scene.
It really is. And it's funny to hear that Elliott Gould says, I just smoked a pipe in that sketch, because there are other people on the couch and like part of the group therapy that have no part in this at all.
I think O'Donoghue throws one line at the end. Yeah.
And Garrett's in there, but has no lines.
But it's great. And we've had two like longer, meaty sketches now, which is nice to see. Like they definitely took the time over the break. They're writing longer, a little bit more complex stuff. And it's fun to see these longer sketches where, like you were saying with Lorraine, they've got room to breathe. They've got room to explore and do stuff with these characters and give us a bit more than just 90-second joke. And it sets it up well for like something like the next bit, which is short, but it's a nice breather from these longer scenes.
Right. And it's also a classic sketch. It's the commercial parody for New Shimmer, which is...
I had forgotten about this one. And
really?
Like, as soon as this, my first one was like, I remember this, because I'd completely forgotten about it until it started.
So New Shimmer is a dessert topping that's also a floor wax. So Dan and Gilda are playing a married couple arguing over what to do with this can, and then Chevy comes in.
It's a dessert topping, you cow. Hilarious. Wrong, but hilarious.
But also Dan's delivery is hilarious. That's yeah. And Chevy comes in to tell them they're both right. Then it's a floor topping, a dessert topping, and a floor wax, and it's great. It's so funny and so weird, and just...
I'm going to say it again. And so well written.
Yeah.
I mean, it's another example. Totally. And I noticed it in this one too, which I think also helped really sell it. It's another instance of the cast not reading cue cards. Like the three of them are all really playing off each other and like talking to each other, which I feel like really just helps sell it. And you can, again, we mentioned with Candice Bergen in the past, like, I don't know, there's just something about it where you can tell they're really invested in it and they're enjoying it.
Yeah. They do a great job. And that, to your point, that's short. It's maybe 90 seconds.
But they play the laughs all the way to the end.
Yeah.
Like at the end where they go to do the sign off and Dan and Gilda go to kiss and they just freeze and they hold that kiss for 25 seconds, whatever. And then Chevy gives his line and he pops up behind the graphics smiling. Yes. Like it's just, they squeeze every ounce of funny out of this short little sketch. And it's great.
Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
And that's why when I said earlier, like when I saw this would have been great. And instead of that try hard in the beginning.
Yeah.
Like this is so good. It's nice. It's short. This would have been a great opening of the show kind of piece. I mean, it fits well here and it's really funny, but when I saw this, that was the first thing that came to my mind is, oh, that would have been a good replacement.
After that, we go to another film by Gary Weiss. This one
We'll have a smoke first.
Do we have a smoke first?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's right. Elliott Gould comes out and
Elliott
introduces
Gould.
the film. That's right.
2 cigarettes, 1 pipe.
He introduces a film by his friend Gary Weiss, who works on the show. This is the second Gary Weiss film we've seen this season. And this is Misty. And it's just a montage of different lounge singers playing Misty, the classic song written by, I have this here, Earl Gardner and Johnny Burke, made famous by Johnny Mathis in 1959.
And you like this or no?
I didn't hate this, but I did feel...
It's a ringing endorsement.
Again, this is one of those things where I was like, oh, I actually enjoyed this film being what it was. I didn't like where it was in the show. Because I felt, again, like just the momentum. But what did you think?
I didn't mind the placement of it. It felt a little long.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not funny, but it's not supposed to be.
Right.
Not all of, Gary Weiss's films are funny. So I liked that it was different, and it was kind of an interesting, unlike other short films we've seen on this program to this point. Like, it was different. It had a little bit of a voice to it. It was something unique, and that I liked.
Yeah. It
went on a little long at some point, then it kind of started to feel like filler to me.
But it was something different. And yeah.
It was different. Again, you still got to give him credit for, trying new things and doing different things. So for that, it's, it was short enough where it didn't bother me. And I didn't mind the placement.
After that, we have another interaction between Gilda and Elliott.
We had a decent Chiron on the way out.
Oh, what was that? I missed it.
I don't remember what it was either.
Oh.
But no, I liked the Chiron on the way out because what I liked about it is you realize that the studio audience is seeing them like on the monitors inside, just as the home audience are.
Yes.
So you see their like surprised reactions, which were fun. And this one was, it was like a corrupt something.
Corrupt city official. Yeah, that's what it was.
And so the guy like looks and like, he's like, oh, it's me. Like he's caught on the Jumbotron. And like, it's fun to like watch these like random people like get on TV for 5 seconds. I don't know. I thought it was interesting watching the guy's reaction.
I noticed that, I don't know if it was the last episode or the one before, where the Chiron came up as Chevy Chase's gay lover, and the guy reacted like, oh.
Yeah. It's fun to watch his reaction.
Yeah. So we see Gilda and Elliott for the second time. So this is our runner this week.
This is our runner. Yeah. I was excited to see this. Like, I'm like, great, this is going to be fun.
Yeah. And again,
I hope it's going to be fun.
It's Gilda saying that she meant everything she said last night, and wanted to know if he meant everything he said last night. And Elliott is, dancing around the question. And
well, before all that, she has the line, "Who's Lydia?"
Oh.
Which is great. Oh, friend I know when I'm in town.
Right. Yes. And then this all sets up. This is his introduction for Anne Murray.
Who's Anne Murray?
Yeah.
Goddamn, Gilda. She's good. Yes. She is good.
She's great. Anne Murray comes on and performs her song, The Call, which is from her 1975 album, Together. The song reached number 6 on the adult contemporary charts in 1976. So it's still on its way up when it airs on this show. How much do you want me to talk about Anne Murray?
Don't look at me. I got nothing. I yet again refuse to do research on the musical guest. As soon as I heard this music, I'm like, really? The only good thing about this performance was there's a perfectly composed shot that they like do a great fade into from the side where she's on the left and you see one of those high spotlights on the right, and they do a really great fade. That's the only good thing about this whole performance.
Yeah.
Dave Wilson is who I'm saying was good in this performance.
Good job, Dave Wilson.
Did they make the house band play this? I couldn't tell because some of them looked like they weren't, but then some were.
I think it was a mixture of, I think some of them were the house band and some were not.
Well, so if you did your research, you might be. My last thing was a question. You might have the answer.
Sure.
Who owed who a favor here?
To get Anne Murray on this?
Yeah, like how did Anne Murray show up on this show?
I mean, look. I don't know. I think we should just move on. Weekend Update is next. I thought Weekend Update started really strong with his first joke of the show when he says President Ford was in New Hampshire this week and he threw a baby and kissed a snowball.
The snowball, nickname Snowball.
Yeah.
Thank God they got rid of that horrible earpiece thing they tried. The Richard Pryor episode.
That did not work.
The Christmas episode.
Yeah, it was the Christmas episode. Did not work.
No.
They did come back to that George Wallace joke, though.
They did. Yeah, it's the third week in a row they do the same George Wallace joke, except this time they use the actual one that O'Donoghue wrote that pissed Richard Pryor off.
I was shocked.
Were you?
I was shocked that they used that joke. And because you gave me the backstory of that joke, I was surprised that 1 month later they come back and use it.
I'm not, because Richard Pryor's not there to get pissed off.
Well, exactly.
And Michael O'Donoghue can pull this shit. I mean, people have told the story. O'Donoghue, maybe not the most open-minded man on the planet.
Right.
So he's going to keep shoving this joke down until it gets on.
Yeah.
And I was trying to, who also obviously knows the story? I was trying to read Chevy and like how he read it, because he obviously knows what happened and why the joke didn't work the first time. And I was trying to get a read, and I really couldn't get anything on him on when he read the joke, because it actually played. Like the audience laughed. It got a decent laugh.
It did.
And I was trying to see how well Chevy felt saying it, and I couldn't really tell.
That's interesting. I at some point we can dive deeper into the relationship between Chevy Chase and Michael O'Donoghue.
Sure.
Yeah. But Lorraine's
They
back.
tried calling Angola again.
Oh, that's right. I did write that
You
down.
liked that the first time, didn't you? You liked the Angola bit, or you thought it was funny at least.
Yeah, because it caught me off guard when I was like, what are they doing? Oh, okay, Angelo's. And then they came back to it again this week because it was just the last episode that they did it. And
Was that last week?
yeah, it was the Candice Bergen episode, the Christmas episode.
I thought this one was a little bit better. I don't know. My first note was like, no, not again. Didn't this not work the first time?
Yeah.
But for some reason, like when he references it messing up the second time, and he has a good line at the end where he says, you can see the fighting has calmed down considerably. Like, I don't know why. This one worked a little better for me. I don't know.
Yeah. And then Lorraine's live spot this week was from Cape Canaveral, where she was covering NASA's plan to dispose of toxic waste in space.
You're going to have to handle this one because I don't like her correspondent character.
No.
Like, she does that voice, and for whatever reason, I just don't dig it.
Yeah.
So by the time the joke of this little bit came up, I had kind of already tuned out.
Honestly, it wasn't that funny. So
yeah,
it wasn't all her voice that she uses.
Speaking of not that funny,
then we go back to it's not the same Jamatol commercial as the first episode, is it? It's exactly the same.
That's the same one. It's the first Jamatol. Yeah.
I thought it read differently. I don't know, but I believe you that it was the same.
My first note on this, really, all it was I would have rather have seen the second one with Jane Curtin.
Yeah.
But then we get back into Weekend Update, and then I see why they used it, which is okay. At least they did something a little bit different with it. They didn't just play the Jamatol pre-tape with O'Donoghue and Chevy and then just come back to Weekend Update and nothing happened. They come back and Michael O'Donoghue's at the desk and him and Chevy are fighting, and
right.
I'll give him credit for that. It's a little bit something else.
Yeah. It was something that I felt went on a little long too.
I think Weekend Update in general is kind of long because they keep going. I think we've been used to, they come back from the commercial break and just say 2 or 3 jokes and get out. But they do that. Chevy messes up and does the toy boat bit again.
Yep.
They have a decent line about the killer dope, which all I could think about if this was like season 3 is they would have had John Belushi on there doing a editorial on it.
But yeah, you're right. It keeps going.
It keeps going. They do have a good joke where they talk about Saturday Night Live is conducting their own research. Yes. So if you have any marijuana you're suspecting may be bad, please send us and we'll check it out.
Send it to Chevy Chase. And then they went over the new NBC logo joke.
That went on forever, it felt like.
Yes.
I like the end, though. They gave Garrett a break. And instead of news for hard of hearing, it's news for people who don't speak English. And Chevy decides to do the top story in another language, which, that was funny. It's a nice change.
It was different, right?
Yeah. Again, we're up to Weekend Update. It's all still good. It's going. All the sketches are pretty good. They're funny.
Yes. They're moving. The show's moving. And
everything's moving along. Yeah. It's great. And aside from Anne Murray, it's been pretty good.
Yeah. And we keep moving right into a bees sketch. So
they're back.
The Killer Bees, Chevy and Gilda, are sitting on their sofa and they hear a news report that there are killer bees coming up from Mexico. And then Belushi breaks in their window and Elliott Gould and Garrett come in the door and they're all dressed as Mexican bees.
It's a very Python-esque sketch. By the end, when they break the wall, I didn't remember this sketch. I remember the bees existing, but I didn't remember the second half of this sketch when Lauren shows up and Dave Wilson, the control room. I didn't remember any of that. So it was kind of fun to see Monty Python-esque, breaking the fourth wall, really breaking it this time. I mean, they really go for it on this one with, Elliott Gould is giving this monologue and the camera then cuts to John Belushi and Garrett Morrison. It took me a minute to figure out what was going on because Garrett's making kind of weird motions and then you realize that the camera and John cues in and then everything kind of falls to hell from there and they stop Elliott and call for Lauren and it was interesting.
I thought it was very good and realistic the way that they played that and then Chevy's just like, Lauren, what's going on? And then
we see Lauren for the first time.
Yeah, makes his first appearance on the show.
Wearing that reindeer sweater, which is like every time I think of him in season 1, he's like, where's that sweater? I feel like.
Maybe he does. So Lauren comes in and then goes back to the control room where we find Dave Wilson is drunk. Dave Wilson's the director of the show. We've talked about him before. And I guess Belushi then gives a monologue, right, about Lorne Michaels and how
giving Dave Wilson a chance and how he's been in the business and was on the wagon and, you know.
And then he wraps it up by saying, I have the utmost respect for him because he's in there right now firing his father. Yeah, it was good. It was a fun breaking.
It was great. It's like
wall.
the tale of two sketches. You know, the bee stuff itself was funny. You know, there's some good lines. Like Don Pardo doing the news report. As John's coming in, he's like, and the bees are black and yellow, overweight, and John yells at her, turn the radio off. Schiller and Levy show up again, guitar and violin in hand. They're playing. Everyone's got their mustaches on. He's like, we want your pollen. This is great. Jane's got an accent for some reason.
Yeah.
Which was great. They called Dan Taco Head at one point. Like, it's just so stupid and funny.
Yeah.
Oh,
it was fun.
There's a good flub when Lauren's running back to the office and Chevy's talking. He goes, I've seen Elliott mad before. I mean, I've seen Lauren mad before. I've seen Elliott mad. He messes up the name. It's kind of funny.
Yeah, that was fun. That was just like, again, lending itself to Elliott Gould having fun and then that carrying over to everyone else.
And then it's still not done.
It's still not done because everyone else leaves the set really except for Elliott Gould. And Gilda comes on with her mom, played by Paula Kahn.
Madeline Kahn's mom.
Yes. She introduces her mother to Elliott. And her mother says, from what Gilda says, we should be seeing a lot of each other, and makes it awkward. And then Gilda mentions that her brother's flying in later tonight to meet him.
It's great. Yeah, it's again, they're keeping that runner going, which is great. It's really funny.
And but what's nice about this runner is it's not a setup like Mel's Char Palace or like Beethoven. Like they're integrating this into the show itself.
Yes.
Right. And
yes.
It's like organically part of the show and makes it more fun and real.
Yeah, it really does. It's very, again, kind of Python-esque where they're really breaking down that fourth wall and you're really blurring the lines between the show and the show behind the show, or, you know, right. Behind the curtain. So it's fun. Yeah. And another long sketch. Again, well written and long and substance to it. And there's a lot going on there. It's really great.
Yeah. Well, Brad, what's great for you is that we then go to Albert Brooks's final film.
My standing ovation.
Your standing ovation. So we have Albert Brooks's sixth and what will be his final film. He even mentions it in the film. And he goes to the National Audience Research Institute to visit the research facility to find out what audiences want, because he's willing to change, to do anything to please the audience.
It's called editing is what they want. Right. They want editing. I could have answered this so simply. Oh, this kept my interest for about a minute.
I think you may have beaten me.
I don't know. I was already so against this. When Elliott Gould's like, "You're filmed by Albert Brooks. It's terrific." I'm like, "Is it, Elliott? Is it though? Right. Is it terrific? Don't sell me on this."
The only part that I found interesting was that he twice mentioned that this might be his last film.
I thought James L. Brooks was interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's okay. I forgot about that.
Yeah, because you want to forget, but
I know.
But yeah, there were three in one of the many sequences of this quote unquote short film. There's three. What are they? Reviewers or doctors? What are they again? I don't know. But James L. Brooks is one. Oh yeah, because they're conducting the research, so he's right. One of them. And one of the other one of the three is an actress, Julie Payne. I'm pretty sure she plays Cheryl's mom on Curb Your Enthusiasm. It's always fun. You watch these old things and you see people you've known 30, 40 years down the road and something else. Right.
I did like the one scene where they have four people in recliners, all with headphones on, and one researcher walking behind them, and they're just like, no, yes, yeah, no, and they're all talking at the same time, different things.
But it's again, we say this every week. Like, there's funny bits in these things. They just go on way too long. Like, once they start talking about the test, it's like, do we really need to see all of this?
Yeah.
But then he shows the one guy and he's got his shirt off and he's got all the shit stuck on him. I'm like, is he wearing a name tag on his bare hairy chest? Like, there's funny stuff in it. But I mean, by the end, I feel like we watched all 106 tests that he mentioned.
I think It sure felt like it.
Well, in honor, Gary, of this being Albert Brooks's final short film, we have a winner to our hashtag Albert Brooks contest.
Oh.
Weeks ago, we asked everyone, please send in, let's hashtag something. And over the thousands of responses we've gotten.
Again, your math might be off, but okay, we'll go. We'll keep going.
We may have had a few less than that. But the winner is going to be hashtag Albert Brooks is a pretentious film student.
And who sent that in?
Film professor Marche, who has quite a lot of experience with film students. So I feel like she's qualified to give such an answer. Thus, she takes the prize.
Were you one of her film students?
Gary, let's move on, please. This is like an Albert Brooks bit. It's taking far too long. Here we go. I like how the one guy was a harsher critic than I am, though. He's like, I hate you. You're the worst. I hate you. You're not funny. I at least give the guy credit. He has a joke here and there.
Yeah.
Anyway, at the end, Albert Brooks takes all the research. He's going to go home. He's going to go on vacation. He's going to read 800 and some pages and figure out what he can do.
No, that's not what he says. He says, I'm going to have someone go through this and give me a 30-page summary. Yeah.
I don't know. I was busy writing, yes, go. So at that point, I was busy. But thus comes the end of the great Albert Brooks experiment.
Yes.
Never really clicked. Obviously, Albert Brooks was in L.A., doing these on his own, sending them in. And, at this point, the show has been doing well. It's been gaining in popularity, starting to catch on a little bit. And I think Lauren and everybody, they all kind of realized they didn't need Albert Brooks. They had something. And so they didn't need to rely on him. And especially somebody who was so outside. Because again, as we've said before, Albert Brooks would get a certain amount of money and budget and go over it. A certain amount of time frame, go over it. And then send these short films that would get put on. So, they ran their course and they, agreed not to renew the contract. And then, and that's, we've seen Gary Weiss come into play. And we'll have home movies at some point. So, the pre-tape's not going away.
Well, I'm going to miss your little rants about Albert Brooks films. So
I'll bring him back, I'm sure. Don't worry.
I know. After that, we have another in the runner.
Still going.
Gilda comes on to tell Elliott that no matter what happens, because they're in the same business, it's going to be hard for people, blah, blah, blah. Don't worry. He will never become Mr. Gilda Radner.
Well, that was a Barbra Streisand joke, right?
Yeah.
That's why I feel like it was like, these have been fun. These have been so much fun, the two of them.
Yeah. And I enjoyed, he's just standing there blowing bubbles with his bubble gum on stage for no apparent reason. It was fun.
This is the best host cast chemistry we've seen period, probably since the John and Candice Bergen. But these two just have so much fun together. It's just so much fun watching them.
Yeah. From there, we go to
something unfun to watch. See, it's like good and bad. It's, balances out.
We go to Muppets reading The Joy of Sex. And it is.
I actually had a good feeling about this because this episode has been so much fun. When we faded in, my first note is, I have a good feeling about this. And then about 30 seconds later, I said, and it's gone. But my hopes were up because I've been enjoying this episode so much.
So Puta and Scred are reading The Joy of Sex. And just for anyone who hasn't kept up on the soap opera that is The Land of Gorch or whatever the other thing is they call it, Puta is married to King Plubis, but she's
sleeping with Scred.
She's sleeping with Scred. It's scandalous.
When did this happen?
They referenced it in one of the earlier, maybe episode 2.
Did they really?
Yeah. It was early. And so she decides that she's not going to continue sleeping with him unless he tells King Plubis, who is his boss and his friend. And so then he goes and tells the great Favat, who essentially tells him to get into masturbation.
You skipped an entirely horrible scene where he goes to Plubis first.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Because my note is like, no, just go to Favat. I'm like, skip Plubis, just go right to Favat. Also, the Albert Brooks Muppets twofer, not a good idea.
No?
I feel like they've done this before, and this is just not a good idea. Thank God it won't happen again, but this back-to-back, not good programming.
No.
But, not surprisingly, we get to Favat and it took forever and moving on. But
We move on to our first talk show of the evening. The talk show is titled Birthright, hosted by Jane Curtin.
of course, who else?
And Jane is interviewing two doctors with different approaches to childbirth. So Elliott Gould is one doctor. He's a New York doctor. And Dan Aykroyd plays a French doctor. Dan gives his demonstration on how birthing should happen, and it's all very gentle and soothing for the baby. And I enjoyed his French accent the entire time as well.
It was fun. And I don't know why, but I laughed when he went to like the demonstration area and like the lights all started. I don't know why, but I laughed when the lights started to dim and he got into it. It was funny.
Yeah. No, so his whole approach is all very soft and gentle, and like the baby is born, she lays on the mother's breast and yada, yada, yada. And it's all very calming and soothing. And then Elliott Gould goes on.
And it's all a setup. Like I was like, I can't wait to see what happens.
And wow, it is. So Elliott Gould, on the other hand, comes over and the baby pops out. He picks the baby up and tosses it and slaps it and then throws it at someone else. And then they're throwing the baby back and forth. And an entire processional happens through the room with Michael O'Donoghue as a clown. Did you see him?
Spraying water in the baby's face.
Spraying a seltzer bottle. And then the whole marching band comes. Some of the guys from the band come marching through.
Well, that's, before he even starts, and Jane says, "What's the name of your method?" And he goes, "We call it Pearl Harbor."
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that joke. This was good. This was fun.
You like this one?
I did, just because, like I said, I think Dan's French accent really was amusing to me. And just Jane setting these things up as the talk show host is always great and subtle. And I liked how over the top Elliott Gould was.
This was a miss for me. In my one note, I said, I think this is the one miss of the night. It was funny, but it took a while to get there. The first half of the sketch with the two guys just kind of being interviewed, there wasn't a lot there. It was all set up for them doing their performances, and not sure if it was totally worth it. But there's definitely some funny bits, and like you said, the Michael O'Donoghue clown seltzer bottle was great, and marching band it had moments.
Well, we should probably just skip over the next moment or a few moments.
She's back.
Anne Murray comes back to sing her song Blue Finger Lou, which is from that same album, Together.
At least it was more upbeat.
Yeah.
I'll give her that. It was a more, because how many times do we, also they don't end the night with it, so I'll give them credit for that.
Yes.
They don't end with a musical number, and it's more upbeat. So those are two pluses.
The placement of the musical guest in this week's show is more akin to what we see now, wherein she was right before Weekend Update, and then she came later in the show, but not at the very end.
It felt good, I'd say.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why, because it is more akin. But I thought they fell in very good spots, and whether I like them or not, performance aside, they worked well where they worked. Yeah,
I agree
totally.
After that, did Don Pardo introduce them, or did Elliott Gould introduce?
No, Elliott Gould came out with cigarette number 3.
Okay.
Elliott Gould walks out smoking cigarette number 3 of the night on camera, introduces the boys from Minnesota.
He introduces a new comedy duo, Franken Davis. Their bit is all about what if the American Indians, Native Americans, what if they had won the war and they ran the country? And then they do a whole newscast in that tone. And
my first note of this is not going to age well. Like, I'm just, before they even start, and I just know the premises, I'm worried, like, this is not going to age well. But I would say I was wrong. It's a lot smarter than I thought it was going to be.
It was very smart, really. So, I mean, they just started making fun of all different ethnicities, really. Cars named, they mentioned a car named the Pollock. They mention different professional sports teams with different names. And they even reference in the sketch, like, should these names be changed because they might be offensive to some of the white people?
And they're like, no, the white man uses these terms to ridicule each other.
It was a very smart sketch.
It was a lot smarter than I thought it was going to be. I was very worried it was going to be just very offensive, and and not a critique at all. And it's funny, like this episode has been very fun and very light and enjoy to watch. And then this is, an instance, where they kind of pick up where they left off on the Richard Pryor episode, where they're smart, funny, edgy. They're saying something that if you stop and think about it, has a lot of weight to it. But they're really good, and making up stuff like the WAP, White Humans Are People Too League.
Yes.
And how they argue that we've been making strides in the last few years. Like now white actors actually play white people in the movies now. After the two of them act out a film, quote unquote, clip where they play the Native Americans and the Swedish guys.
Yeah, that was good. That was fun.
It was, there's just all little, it's just all the jokes were great where they're talking about the sports logos and, they were offended by the Screaming Rabbi logo.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like, they do a really good job. It's very funny. It's very smart. And it's our first chance of seeing Franken and Davis, the team together on camera finally.
You're right. Yeah.
Tom Davis has said, as I think many of us know, there's always a dress rehearsal in the afternoon or the evening, and it's much longer than the actual show. And so after the dress, they always cut stuff. And Tom Davis has said from the beginning, him and Al Franken would always try to have a bit or two in their back pocket. So if after dress, they were a little short on time or something fell through or whatnot, those two could just show up and do, 5 minutes, 6 minutes or something between the two of them. No sets, no nothing, just do a 2-man bit. So they got their first chance on this episode, and I think they took the opportunity and ran with it. They were great.
That's awesome. And that's it. Then we go to Good Nights, and when we come back from Good Nights, it was still dark. There was no picture, and you hear Elliott Gould saying, do I have a line? Am I saying something? And then it fades up, and you see that he and Gilda are getting married by Michael O'Donoghue, and that's it. That's our good night.
You could tell they obviously they got short for time, and we just talked about putting Franken and Davis on, but somewhere along the lines they go fast and they're just rushing to put this together, and they get 2 live mics. They're like, damn, that was quick. I wish it was longer. It would have been funny. You had Chevy up there as a groomsman. You had Lorraine and Jane were there. Like you said, Michael O'Donoghue was marrying them, but they have literally one line and then credits.
And that was the show. They
run the credits. Dave Wilson's name's crossed off in the credits. Was funny. And then Don Pardo chimes in. Lorne Michaels was played by Dave Wilson, and Dave Wilson was played by Lorne Michaels. Now, in talking it through, do you still not find it as funny as you thought it was going to be?
It was better than I gave it credit for.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. No, it's a fun episode, and I think
it's a good one.
Again, it's a fun host. He also brings a lot of tools to it, so that helps.
Totally. Yeah, it's a great return to form.
Well, Brad, what are your best bits?
I go with Godfather Therapy, The Killer Bees, and I don't know if you can do this or not, but I go with the Gilda and Elliott Gould runner because it was just fun to watch throughout the episode. Sure. If that's possible to make that a bit, but those are the 3. I'd pick those 3.
It's a bit. Yeah, why not? I think Godfather Group Therapy is a no-brainer, and new Shimmer for me.
Oh, that's another. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. God damn, Godfather was so good. I can't believe it took me this long to realize how great Lorraine Newman was in that sketch.
Yeah.
I think she's better than John in that sketch. I really do.
I'm gonna rewatch it now with a very critical eye. But I don't think you're wrong. Like, I'm not looking to prove you wrong. I'm just kind of curious.
But yeah, fun episode. Great. Emmy-winning episode. Talking it through, you can totally tell the writing.
Yeah.
And you know what? It's funny. I could kind of see, I think you and I talked about this a little bit before we started recording, why they put this up. Because weren't you wondering, like, why it was this episode? Were you asking? Or no? Did I make that up?
No, I think we did talk about this. But in my mind, I was thinking, well, if Lauren, Chevy, and Michael did the lion's share of the writing for this episode, of course they would put it up for an Emmy. But what were you going to say?
I think this is definitely, I think this is definitely the most well-written episode, if not second. But if it's second to Richard Pryor episode. And I'm sure they didn't want to, like, to what you're saying, they didn't want to put that up for nomination because Paul Mooney had a lot of the heavy lifting, I feel like, in that episode. So
right.
Up until now, I can see why this would be it. But it's great. It is. It's very smart. It's really fun. I'm excited to see what we do next week with Buck Henry, another great SNL host.
And another solid performer who brings more to the table than you than you would think.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Brad, anything else we want to hit on this show?
I don't think so. It was good. This is a good one. They're back.
This was good. This was fun. And it leads us into next week's episode. Next week, we're going to review Season 1, Episode 10, hosted by Buck Henry, with musical guests Bill Withers, and a return of Toni Basil, this time as a musical guest. Previously, she was on performing with the Lockers.
That's a pretty sweet lineup.
This is another really good episode. I'm excited to watch and excited to talk about. So until then, good night.
Good night.
Have a pleasant tomorrow.
Tomorrow.